big hello and welcome. It's Kate from Zen Stitching, and I'm super excited to be joining you today for another one of our Making Zen Artist Chats. So today we're in the studio with Jessica Swift. Jess is the most amazing visual artist and textile designer, and I'm super thrilled that she's part of Making Zen and super thrilled to be talking with you today. Hello and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here. I'm like being lulled by your amazing accent. I love Australian accents.
That's so funny because I forget I sound different or have an accent at all.
Yeah, well, it's all relative, right? It's like it's an accent to me. And anyway, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
And I'm thrilled to have you here because you are an incredibly talented designer. You work on paper, you work on textiles, and everything that you create is vibrant and joyful and also soulful. And one of the reasons why I wanted to invite you to Making Zen is because of that soulfulness that your art creates. Not to mention it is also vibrant and joyful and happy as well. Uh, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your creative journey. How did you get started and what were kind of like the steps of the path that you took to get to where you are today?
Ooh, I love this question. Gosh, I mean, like so many creative people, I think I've been making things my whole life. It's always been my favorite thing, drawing, painting, color. I've just been obsessed with color since I was a child, and still am. So, yeah, so I made things as I was growing up. I ended up going to a liberal arts college and focusing on art while I was there. So I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in oil painting,
Oh,
which is
wow.
not something I have done for many, many, many years at this point. But yeah, so I studied art when I was in school, and then with no real intention of actually being a working artist, which is kind of interesting. It just, I guess, was sort of a natural thing for me to do since I've always loved art, but I didn't know what I wanted to do after I finished school.
Mm,
So I worked in restaurants and kind of fumbled around for a little while and ended up entering like a juried art festival, kind of on a whim. I didn't have a lot of paintings that I had created. I wasn't painting regularly. I didn't have a studio, like nothing. But I ended up entering this show. It was just sort of one of those gut things, right? It was just this intuitive decision, and ended up getting into the show and then realized, oh my gosh, now I have to make an entire booth's worth of artwork in the
mm,
next few months because now
mm.
I'm in the show and I have like nothing to sell. So I guess I better get busy. Um, so I spent the next few months painting furiously, like on my bedroom floor, in all of my free time, and did this show over the course of a weekend. And it was like a wild success. I was surrounded by, like, I sold dozens of paintings, which I was not expecting at all. Which was wonderful and amazing. But one of the most important things that happened for me that weekend was that I was surrounded by people who this was their job. They traveled around to different shows all over the country, selling their work, connecting with customers and clients, and making their own schedules and getting to be creative and just like making the whole thing up in whatever way made sense for them. And there was just this, I just connected with it in this way that was like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And I was young, I was like 23. And so I didn't have kids and a mortgage and like all the things yet. So everything was just kind of wide open. And I was like, I'm going to be an artist for a living. And I started my business, and that was the beginning for me. And so I didn't have a website. Like, this was in 2004. So it was a long time ago, 20 years ago. I didn't have a website. I didn't have an online shop. I didn't have any of that stuff. So the first iteration of my business was very local, and I was just obsessed. And I spent all of my time making art. And I got a studio, and I loved it so much. And so I did that for a few years. And then I discovered design blogs. And that led me to discovering something called surface pattern design, which I didn't know was a job that people had. So like designing patterns, repeating patterns that go on things like fabric and wallpaper and rugs, bedding. Like I started encountering these artists who were making these designs and collaborating with companies to make these cool products. And I remember feeling so excited, but also like, why didn't anybody tell me that this was something I could do? And I didn't really know how to use a computer. Like I didn't know how to get started on this path, but I just knew, again, it was like a gut feeling, like this is what I want to do. I want to be a pattern designer. So I started teaching myself how to use Adobe Illustrator, and I started learning about art licensing, and I made my first website, and like just started. I've just always been really good at just following whatever interests me, and just figuring it out as I go, and making lots of mistakes and jumping in and just figuring it out and winging it, for better or for worse. So yeah, so that was at about 2007, 2008. That's when I eventually taught myself how to make patterns, and then started licensing my artwork, and my business and my creativity really started to go in a different direction. So I continued painting, but I started an Etsy shop. Etsy was like pretty new in those early days, and my business started becoming more focused on selling things online, collaborating with companies, and working. I was obsessed with designing repeating patterns on the computer. So that's what I really started focusing on. And that's sort of where I still do that today. That's still one of my favorite things to do today. And I still paint. And, I've just kind of really followed my whims and the things that have interested me along the way. Some things have led me to realize that it's like not something that I wanted to do. Like I designed logos for people for a while and realized, graphic design and working to like client briefs that doesn't really light me up. I, have manufactured things, and I realized that I really like the designing part of it, but then the selling part of it and like being, that part of it doesn't light me up as much. So I've really just sort of jumped into a lot of things and have kind of intuitively figured out my path. I mean, I'm still intuitively figuring out my path as I go along. I started teaching about a decade ago. I started teaching people how to design their own patterns. I have a class called Pattern Camp, and that has since led to other types of classes. I teach people how to use art as a way to connect with their inner selves, and strengthen your relationship with your inner self and your intuition. That's something I've been doing for the last couple of years. Yeah, my strategy has just been to follow the things that light me up.
And isn't that a wonderful strategy to have? And, to A, have that strategy, and B, have the gumption or belief in yourself to actually go through with that. Because quite often, we want to do things, but our inner voice or our inner critic, particularly as artists, tells us that we're not good enough, or we procrastinate, so that we're all of those kind of things. And but I love hearing how what kind of set you on the path of all of your creativity was this art fair, but just being surrounded by like-minded people and realizing that if they could do it, you could do that too. And isn't that I feel like there's such a strength and such a power within a community like that.
Definitely. I absolutely agree. I mean, I think I probably would have found my way to being, in a creative career one way or another, but I do feel like just that early success and early exposure to people who were creating their own version of success for themselves was really, really instrumental for me. And what's so cool about this time that we're living in now is that we don't have to, like, we can still find that locally, but we can find that online so easily now. Like, there are just communities filled with people who are doing that, who are just doing things their own way, creating their own path, defining their own version of success, making their own schedules. Like, it's so exciting and just easier than ever to find your people.
Yeah, it really is. And that is the magic of the internet. I was reflecting with another of our artists who had a similar path to you, but instead of following her passions at an early age, everyone said, well, you got to get a real job. And I guess this was before the internet really did blossom. So there wasn't the opportunity for the online community that we do have today. And I really think we're so blessed to have such a strong online community. There's so much inspiration that is shared and connections that are made that we couldn't make otherwise if we didn't have that kind of virtual web.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too, though. It's like a double-edged sword sometimes, right? Like, we also have everything at our fingertips, and we have everyone at our fingertips that we get to go compare ourselves to and just feel really bad about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And it's like, you can use it to feel inspired or you can use it to feel defeated. And sometimes it's like a fine line, for me anyway, which way I focus when it
Yes.
comes to the internet or social media in particular.
And that's such a good point because there is two sides to the sword, so to speak. And I think it can inspire creativity, but it can also, like you say, kill creativity in the sense that you might think, oh, it's already been done before. Why should I even try?
Yeah.
Or that person is better than me, or all those kind of things. And it's reassuring to hear that you also have those kind of experiences too, those same kind of thoughts. Do you have any suggestions or tips on how you identify when you're thinking that way and how you move around it?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I feel like I find myself feeling that way regularly. It's so easy to slip into that. But I know, like, making art is a place where I can go to just be myself, or to be with myself and to sort out what is going on inside of me, to give myself space to let all of the other things go and to really calm my nervous system down. So I think my best tip is just to start making art as soon as you can. Like, get the pen to the page or the paintbrush to the canvas or whatever it is. Like, the sooner you can eliminate that gap between the thinking and the mind chatter that doesn't feel good to getting your hand moving, whatever that means, the better. Because once you're moving and once you're making something, then all that other stuff starts to fall away. Like, nothing good tends to happen in that gap, right? Like, we can overthink it all. We can procrastinate. We can listen to that mean inner critic voice. But the sooner we can, like, the more we can shorten the gap between the realizing the unhelpful mental space that you might be in to making that first mark, the better. So just get started. And it doesn't even you don't have to have an idea. That's something that I teach in all of my classes, is that the getting started is what, for me anyway, often allows the ideas to flow. Like, if I were waiting to have a brilliant idea for what I wanted to create and what I wanted it to look like, I would be waiting forever. Like, I would never start. Can you relate to that? Are you that way?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So just getting started, that's the key.
Yeah. And I love that. And I have a mental picture of you with your phone in one hand and paintbrush or it's in the other hand. It's like,
Yes. Which do I choose? What do I do?
That's
That's pretty accurate.
and I do love that because one of the philosophies that I embrace is the create before consume, in the
Yeah,
sense of not before you eat, but before you start looking at what other people are doing. So that
yeah.
way you're kind of fresh and inspired and excited rather than going down the rabbit hole of what other people are doing and kind of
Mm-hmm.
getting carried away that way as well.
Yeah. One thing that I do also, which feels kind of weird to say out loud, but it makes a lot of sense for me for whatever reason, is that when I'm feeling that way and I'm comparing myself to someone else or a lot of other people or whatever it might be, is sometimes I'll just go look at my own website, which is just it's like everything it's mine. It's what I make. And I can look at around my studio and look at the things I make here, but for some reason looking at my website really helps me remember like this is what I do. This is my little corner of the internet, and it's not supposed to look or feel like anybody else's. So I don't know if that's another tip, but like keeping your eyes on your own paper, just looking at what you make rather than looking what other people make. I think it's just another version of what you just said.
Yeah,
Before
that's
consuming.
a nice reiteration though, like just taking stock of what you've done and how you've done it to remember that you've got your own style, your own signature way of working, and even though you might think, well, everybody draws or everybody creates patterns, not everybody does, and not everybody does it the same way you do. And I think that's where we have to remember that it's what we bring to the creative process that makes it special and unique.
Mm-hmm.
I always say stitching is like handwriting. You can't stitch the
Yeah.
same as anybody else because we're influenced by our hands and the weather and how we sit and whether we're rushing or feeling calm. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's the same with making art, It's like every time you show up to the page or your sketchbook or whatever, it's going to be a different experience. And some of them are going to be more challenging than other experiences, and that's normal. It's like a reflection of life, right? Like what you're doing, what the things that you're making are a mirror in a way.
Yeah, yeah, they can't help but be influenced by what's happening around us and what we're interested in and
Hmm.
the colors that are of the season and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, just with your it sounds like you work a lot in your sketchbook. Is
Yes.
that a daily practice?
It is not a daily practice, and I will say that this is a somewhat new-ish practice too. So this is my sketchbook that I'm currently working on. I'm almost done with it. My goal with this sketchbook, which I have not worked in this every day or even close to it, but my goal was to become friends with a sketchbook, with this sketchbook, and to not be afraid of creating on paper. My favorite surface to paint on is wood, which is not as easy to like, you know, a sketchbook is nice. You can toss it in your bag. It's easy to carry around. It's harder to carry around like panels of wood. I guess I could do it, but it'd be kind of odd and difficult. Um, so I've always really admired artists who create these beautiful sketchbooks that are like art pieces when they're finished. Um, and I thought, I wonder if I can become friends with a sketchbook because it has never felt like the natural place for me to go create. Um, but I really wanted to give it a try because I feel like there's a lot of value. There's just a lot of value in it. And so I'm almost finished with it. And it has been wonderful and I'm not afraid of it anymore. And it's like my own little playground now. Um,
I really loved hearing that you set yourself, like, would you say, a mini challenge of making friends with a sketchbook,
mhm.
which in itself is a really good kind of like entryway into working in a different way. What were some of your, would you say, maybe guiding principles comes to mind, but for a lot of people, a blank page is so off-putting, and I'm wondering if maybe that was in part one of the kind of apprehensions you had, and if it was, how did you get past that? What's your
Yeah.
secret?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that feels challenging. For some reason, a blank canvas or a blank wood panel feels less intimidating because often my first step will be to just put down a layer of paint, knowing that that might and often does, it might get covered up completely. Like you might not see that bottom layer. And so the point of that is really just to trick my brain into thinking that I've already started, when really my first step is just like a very, very easy baby step. I don't really have to think about it because it might not even be there in the final painting. That feels different to me in my sketchbook because layering a lot of different like layers of paint on paper in a sketchbook, I don't know, it just feels trickier. So I think the blank page has been more of an intimidating factor with the sketchbook for me, just because I've had to start in a different way. But so I've noticed that I just need to start making different kinds of marks, knowing that those might get covered up or they might get turned into something else. But so I'll take like colored pencils or Posca paint pens, which are, they act kind of like paint, but it's a marker. So it's, those are some of my favorite supplies. So it's the same principle, just like get started with a first mark as soon as I can. So then I feel like I've started and know that each mark will inform the next mark. And my job is just to like get out of my way as much as I can and just listen. Just listen. Also, giving myself permission to like remember that not every page has to be a masterpiece. I had a professor in college who used to say to me, he'd say, you have to be willing to make the bad art in order to make the good art. And I feel like I need to find a way to say that differently because I don't really think that there is such a thing as bad art and good art. Like it's so subjective, right? And it's all useful. The bad art, like often you learn something important in the making of it, or you get an opportunity to be gentle with yourself or to remember that sometimes things are messy and not everything is supposed to be perfect. Like there's a lot that you can get from making the things that are not visually as pleasing to you as other things too. So like it's all useful. But I've remembered that since college. You have to be willing to make the bad art in order to get to the good art. And also he used to tell me, don't get precious with your artwork. So I try to remember that too. Like, I don't have to take this as seriously as I'm taking it right now. I can make mistakes and it's okay. And I can make something that I don't really like and that's okay. Like, it's all okay. It's all allowed. And any time that I spend making art is time well spent.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, there's so many gems of wisdom in there.
Well, you can thank Professor Bruce North from my college days.
Thanks, Professor Bruce. But it is so true, and I really like what you're saying about there is no bad art, because even in the bad art, and like you say, it should be reframed as a different term rather than bad, because labeling something good and bad really isn't helpful. But you can learn from making mistakes, and quite often it's the mistakes where not only are you learning, but you're also growing, and you'll recognize what works for you, what feels right for you. So I really liked hearing that you said that, and I also really like not getting precious with your art, because that's something that I think we all kind of can get carried away with doing. And I know, back probably 20 years ago, maybe even longer ago now. Don't tell anyone.
I mean, how is it even possible, right? Do you feel like that? I'm like,
No,
how
no,
am
yeah,
I talking
exactly.
about 20 years ago, and I was a grown up. Like, I was a grown up already 20 years ago. A
I'm
young
only 21 still in my mind.
Same. Same.
Which is absolutely hilarious. But a while ago, in Australia, we were having a serious bushfire season, and it got to the point where we were seriously had to consider evacuating the house and taking what was precious. And at the time, I'm like, I've got all of my sketchbooks. I've got to take them with me, and big boxes and totally not practical. And Mum's like, you know what, Kate? If you're clever enough to have done it once, you're clever enough to do it again, and the second time will probably be even better than the first. And that gives me goosebumps just thinking about it, really, because it's so true. Like, we shouldn't get so hung up on our ideas, because if we can do it once, we can do it a second time, and with more finesse.
Solid mom advice.
Yes, I know, good old mum.
Really good.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's true though. And I also find that, like, my favorite pieces of my own that I've made are the ones where there are imperfections, and lines are wonky and things are not perfect. And life is not perfect and people are not perfect. And so the things that we make can be a reflection of that. It just allows us to stay loose and have more freedom, I think, when we when we give ourselves the space to not have every little teeny detail be perfect.
Yes.
That gets stifling.
Yeah, and I think too, in today's realm, if you wanted perfect, you could probably generate it all on a computer.
Yeah, right. That's what AI is for.
Yeah, exactly. So there is something really magical in the touch of the hand, the handmade, the wonky lines, and just the beauty of the imperfections, that when you get proficient at these things, sometimes it's really hard to go back and have those imperfections. So it's worthwhile embracing them, I think. And just one of the comments that you had earlier about when you're working on your panels, your wood panels or your canvases, how you put a layer of paint on first. I absolutely loved hearing that. And I'm really curious, do you have a favorite go-to color, or do you just put whatever color on that you would feel like on the day?
I have a favorite, like, go-to combination of colors that I will often start with, but really, I think so much about making things is about listening to your intuition and listening to that little quiet voice that's kind of telling you what the next step wants to be. And so that's really what I listen for when I'm getting started. Is it's often just very quiet and quick, and it's like, use that hot pink, use that, pick up that lavender color. Or so I just have gotten good at trusting that, I guess, and just knowing that first step, listening to that and trusting and doing whatever that first step is will lead to the unfolding of whatever this thing that I'm making is meant to be. So really the color that I begin with just really depends a lot. But if I'm feeling stuck or unsure, or just am not able to access that, like, deeper intuitive part of me because my mind is too chattery or whatever, my go-to combination of colors is some version of orange with some version of green, like orange and green. Yeah, which I don't know why. It just feels the most natural to me. And then with some pink in there too. So orange, pink, and green. That's often where I find myself.
I love it. Well, it's so fun hearing that process, particularly as having not trained as a painter. So it's a different way of working for me. So I didn't understand that with a lot of painters, you always do start with a bottom color and then you add on top, and quite often that bottom color isn't part of the final picture. So it's really fun to hear how you approach making your painted pieces, and that there are these subtle layers of color underneath that may or may not come through depending on how the final piece looks.
Yeah, it's cool too because I think that energy still lives in the painting even if you can't see it. I mean, I think it's the same with any creations. I think you could say the same of a quilt or, um, anything that's taken some time and attention to make, is that energy that you put into it is still there, even if you can't see all of the parts of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I at one point in my life was making and selling bags made from recycled plastic. And I always found that the ones that I really liked were the ones that sold, whereas the ones that I made with the intention of selling never really kind of resonated with the customer.
Yeah.
So I do believe that, like you say, there's an intention behind things that does come through.
Hmm.
That doesn't matter if it's through painting or other mediums.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that and have had that same kind of experience.
Yeah, fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It
Yeah,
really is.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like a whole other conversation we could have, I'm sure.
I know, and I am mindful of your time. So before we wrap up, I'd love for you to share with us what you're going to be teaching at the Making Zen retreat.
Yeah, I mean, I am really going. I feel funny even saying that I'm teaching anything, because when I show up to do things like this, I have no plan. I don't know what I'm going to create when I start. Like, I'll likely be, I'm going to be working in my sketchbook, but I don't know what's going to come out as I start. So that is what I will be teaching in my lesson, is how to show up without a plan and listen to your intuition and follow those nudges and see what happens. And I like to say in the classes that I teach, in the groups that I lead and things, is that the finished product is actually the least important part. What's most important is the experience that you're having on the inside. It's like the inner journey, the access that you can open up to listening to that deeper, wiser part of yourself, rather than that chattery, judgmental part. That's the point for me when I sit down to work in my sketchbook or work on a painting. It's that access to myself that I am able to create. And sometimes the things that I make I end up really liking them. And that's like a wonderful bonus, especially as somebody who, I do this for a living. So hopefully I can make some things that I like and that other people are going to like. But that's not always the case. And some of my most important, like aha moments have come through creating pieces that have never seen the light of day. No other eyeballs have seen them. They are not like successful visual creations, but they've been really important for different reasons. So
Yeah.
I will be walking through that whole process where
Oh,
people see
how
that for themselves.
that is so exciting. And I think that's going to be such a wonderful workshop for everyone to participate in, because it really is a journey of self-discovery for each of us. We can see how you like to approach it and try on your techniques. But it's really exciting to hear that you aren't really sure what the outcome's going to be, with the exception of it's going to be
Literally
helpful.
never do I know what's going to happen.
You got me on the edge, on
Yeah.
tenterhooks.
Well, stay tuned. We'll see.
Nail biting drama.
I know. I mean, I'm hoping that whatever gets created is not really ugly.
It'll be awesome. I think just even seeing your process and how you approach the page, particularly since you said this is an excursion yourself that you've just dived into, and making friends with the sketchbook, because I know there's a lot of people out there who are of the same ilk, where it's like everyone talks about having a sketchbook practice, but it's like, I don't know, it doesn't feel comfortable. How do I even get over the fear of the white page? What happens if I do something wrong? Or even like, exactly, what
Happen.
happens if we shorten that gap between looking at content and creating content? So it's creating our own beautiful stuff, not content. So it can be
You know.
so good. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jess. It's been so lovely connecting with you,
So
and
much.
I'm super excited.
I'm very honored and grateful to be part of your event. Yeah, at first when you invited me, I was like, this seems like, I don't stitch. I sew a little bit, but but it just seems like our approaches are just so similar. And I love that so much. Like, you can take whatever I'm talking about in my workshop and apply it to whatever it is that you make. And the same, like it's all related. So I'm really happy to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me in this creative journey. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And if you'd like to learn more about Making Zen, please check out the links below where you can find out all about the workshops and creativity, community, and all that kind of good stuff. Wishing you many happy hours of stitching.